It's 2:30 a.m. right now. So it's 2:30 a.m. right now in the morning a.m. and I'm supposed to be asleep, but then again, I'm really behind my upload schedule, so I have to do this. Anyway, I'm gonna do half an album review and then I'm gonna go to bed because man's gotta sleep. But this video is gonna be pretty special because this is actually the last album review of the decade. And so, yeah, I'm going to do. Originally, this is going to be two separate videos, but I don't have enough time. So here we are, two reviews at once. Anyway, starting off, we have the Julia Holter album, Have You in My Wilderness. And Julia Holter is a singer-songwriter, most well known for her dream pop and chamber pop. I actually did a review of Aviary last year. Thought it was pretty good, but it wasn't as good as this one, which I think is her most well-written, most focused and concentrated indie dream pop album ever. So, what I think is very special about this album uh, is, of course, you get the very nice, beautiful, gorgeous, luscious, very angelic, heavenly instrumentals, but also you get Julia's vocals, which are just very cute, very clean, and reminds me of Nico. Yeah, we get some really beautiful pianos on almost every single track, as well as strings to back this up, and it gets kind of orchestral and kind of baroque pop, actually. Baroque. I'm not talking about Barack Obama. I'm talking about, like, the time period in musical history, Baroque. And a prime example of a Baroque pop would have to be the album opener, Feel You, which is a very bright opening for the album. We get some very Baroque keyboards and also some very bright strings that are very light-hearted and very friendly and welcoming to begin with. And it just feels like a really refreshing, nice morning with, breeze sort of passing by your face. It's a very pleasant opening, and of course we get the vocals, which is like a bird being set free into the sky. It's incredibly gorgeous. The second track, Silhouette, is also really pleasant and harmless and angelic, almost ethereal as well, but at the same time, it's a pretty catchy, nice little string-backed guitar song, and it is very dreamy, very lovely, and Julia Holter shows her, cheeky, but also at the same time very nice and lovely personality in her performance, which I think is really cool. We also have the track How Long? Question mark, which is, I guess, the most sinister song on the entire album. It's very dreary. We get some deep bellowing vocals that are that feel sort of drunken, that are sort of crawling on the ground, or more like crawling on the instrumentals. We get some weepy strings, and even though the track is not really all that eventful, I still really like the tone that this track creates. And then we have the fourth track, Lucette Stranded on the Island, which has some repetitive lyrics and repetitive instrumentals, but as the song moves along, the instrumentals, they get more thick and more dense, and slowly it becomes almost drony and definitely atmospheric. And at the back, we get some clanky percussions, which I think is a really nice addition to the sea of thick instrumentations that are already very dreamy and surreal. Alright, up next, we have the big single Sea Calls Me Home, which is already one of my favorite pop songs of the decade period. It's a very clean, cut, polished pop song, yes, but it takes advantage of that to create one of the most holistic and angelic and lovely pop songs of the decade. And to call it pop is not quite accurate because it isn't the sugar coated, the lubby dubby pop music. It is very grand. It opens its arms wide, ready for an embrace. On this track, we get some really nice baroque pianos and other instrumentals, which sort of runs on some very sweet, nostalgic chords. The vocal performance by Julia is almost eccentric, kind of fun, actually. And in the middle of the song, we even get a whistle solo, which is actually great. I mean, Julia really whistles on point, and we also get a really aggressive, just fiery, flaming saxophone solo that is impressive. And we also get Julia singing, and the melodies here, which are of course catchy but also bright and sunny. I can't swim, its lucidity so clear. It's very lovely. Afterwards, we have Night Song, which is less eventful of a track, but still very surreal, dense, and spacey. The vocals are way more gentle, the strings are also very tender, and we get some really beautiful, haunting refrains all over the track. Uh, the track sort of ends abruptly, which I think is a little underwhelming, but still, great track. And afterwards, even greater is the track Everytime Boots, which is actually this very peppy, fun track with some jumpy pianos and some jazzy instrumentals as well. I really like the fun, playful personality that this track gives off, and the strings are amazing. The tip tap percussion and the romping drums are a great addition to such a fun, dabbling, benobling, rejackling, penicillin, pinapolin track. And afterwards, we have Betsy on the Roof, which also reverts back to the very dreamy, surreal Julia Holter style. And this track is especially reverby. And again, the melodies here, they are haunting. They're surreal. The vocals on this track are the most passionate on the entire record, and the lyrics, while they are loose, they're here and there, jumbled, mumbled, not mumbled, but definitely jumbled, and a little esoteric. They're very well written, and they sort of create this really nice image. And we have the track Vasquez, which I think is the least eventful and the least engaging track on the album. Very light and loose instrumentals here, spoken words on the first half of the track. It's not very direct, a little directionless maybe. And the album ends off with the title track, which is also pretty uneventful, even though it's a pretty haunting ballad about this guy leaving her. The song ends abruptly again, which I thought is a little underwhelming, but still, I think a bulk of the album is fantastic, and I'm comfortable giving this album a 9 out of 10. Favorite song here? Sea Calls Me Home. Least favorite? Vasquez. I have just woken up, and before I even had breakfast, again, I don't have time, so let's talk about Fiona Apple's. Wow. The idler wheel is wiser than the driver of the screw, and whipping cords will serve you more than ropes will ever do. So, Fiona Apple is a singer-songwriter, multi-instrumentalist, and this is one of her albums. And I think this might be her best album so far. The songwriting is solid from start to end. The melodies and the chords on this project are all pretty engaging and interesting, and the instrumentals, the production, they are all pretty interesting, and it doesn't really bore you. Of course, I think Fiona Apple's voice is fantastic because you can actually really hear a lot of personality in her voice. Whenever she's in her low range, she can sound very beautiful, very gorgeous, and luscious. But whenever she gets louder or higher, you can hear the rasp and the frustration and the aggressiveness in her voice. And I thought this range of emotions can be expressed so well with Fiona Apple's very unique voice. The lyrics on this project are mostly poetic, and the instrumentals here are extremely versatile. There are many different tracks with different instrumentals. Some of them are more ethereal and clean, some of them are more cacophonous and noisy. It's all pretty interesting, and most of the melodies here, they are catchy, melodic, and somewhat jazzy and bluesy as well, which is one of the reasons why I thought this is a really unique indie pop album. So the album starts off really nicely with the track Every Single Night, which starts off with some stripped back, chilly, I guess, xylophones, or I think it's glockenspiel, but the pianos later come in, and they're great as well. The vocal performance on this track, they are intense. It almost sounds like Fiona Apple is acting, trying to express as much emotion as possible. And again, she can sound very fragile and afraid and sweet and angelic, but also at the same time raspy and frustrated and angry. And we have the chorus of the track where it just gets very frustrating. Every single night's a fight with my way. We have the second track, Daredevil, with some punchy pianos and fast hand claps, and also some skittery drums, which are fantastic. The instrumentals are rather stripped back once again, but the melodies, the chords on this track, they are golden. They are really well arranged to keep you listening, to keep your attention. And again, the lyrics, they are fantastic, with one of the lines saying, "I'm all the fishes in the sea." For the third track, Valentine, we get some extremely beautiful, just gorgeous, golden, glistening piano chords that are nostalgic and luxurious, and at the same time old school and stylish. We have the lyrics talking about feeling hurt because of a relationship, and actually Fiona Apple talks a lot about romantic relationships on this record, but with poetic lyrics, I guess. We have the track Jonathan, which is not one of the more eventful tracks on the album. I do really like the pianos on the track, even though the melodies that the piano keys are playing, they're a little loose, a little esoteric, and the track sounds a little confusing, so I guess it's not one of the better tracks here, but the quality sort of returns to such height on the next track, Left Alone, with its jazzy drums, its jumbled bluesy pianos. And on this track, unlike on the track Valentine, where Fiona talks about being hurt from a relationship because she isn't loved, on this track she sort of contradicts herself and talk about how she can't love someone back. And we have the track Werewolf, which is also a stripped back piano song. And the pianos, they are, solid. Solid. And the lyrics are solid as well, where on this track, she talks about how this person is just monstrous, like a shark or a werewolf, but it's actually her fault because she's the one who provided the bloody wound in the sea or the moon in the sky to turn the sky into the werewolf. And then we have Periphery, which is another piano-backed song. I really like the chompy drums on the track. However, the track is not as engaging. And then we have the song Regret, which is also a low-key piano-backed song, except we get this very, very thin layer of ominous drone in the back. Also, we get some of the most ragged screams on the entire project. Ragged vocals, but on this track, screams like Kurt Cobain screams. And afterwards, we have Anything We Want, which has an interesting instrumental with its glass bottles clanking and mic taps. And this track also has a really nice marchy rhythm to it while still having a pretty catchy and melodic melody to it. And we have the penultimate track, Hot Knife, where the music video is actually a collaboration between Fiona Apple and PTA, one of my favorite directors. But Hot Knife is fantastic. It's really intense. It's a really intense track, but it tries to loosen you up once in a while with shots of, jazzy, bluesy pianos. Throughout the entire track, we get a rumbling sea of just hand drums, and it's sort of like building up towards something. And on the entire track, Fiona Apple is basically singing this bluesy, jazzy refrain, a cappella style, without any other melodic instrumental. And again, occasionally we get some pianos, but most of all, we only hear her vocals and vocal layers and vocal harmonies, and they're all really catchy, really fluttery, and they're fantastic. If I'm butter, then he's a hot knife. The album ends off with Largo, which is a pretty quiet ending. We get some nice slow pianos, some bluesy instrumentals that sound really weepy and defeated. And I guess I wish for a more climactic ending to the album, but still, I think the entire album, it's pretty great. Pretty great. Also feeling a 9 out of 10 on this album. My favorite track being... okay, that's a good question. I guess my favorite track is Hot Knife, because it's the one that I keep on going back to. And my least favorite is Jonathan. So, have you listened to these two albums from 1 to 10? How much did you rate it? Like if you like it, and subscribe if you want more. And thanks for watching.